Welcome to Business Beyond the Mic, where we join Carly Van Heerden, CEO and founder of We Edit Podcasts. Together, let's uncover the art of podcasting.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Business Beyond the Mic. I'm your host, Carly Van Heerden. Today on the show, we welcome Ashley Menzies Babatunde. Ashley is a lawyer, career advisor, and storyteller passionate about work at the intersection of humanity and career. She is the host of No Straight Path, a podcast aimed at exploring the human stories behind success. She believes in the power of storytelling because it allows people to connect with one another, inspire each other, and build empathy. Ashley graduated from Harvard Law School and received her BA in political science from Stanford University. She is also an LA native with Black American and Guyanese roots. She enjoys a good memoir, quality time with her husband and loved ones, and embracing her Guyanese culture through soca dance. The story that Ashley has to share is incredible, and she takes us all the way back to her childhood and how her personal journey actually showed her that the path to success is not linear. Now, since launching her podcast, Ashley's mission has been to share the stories of others in order to help people feel less alone. Even though this podcast started as essentially a grief project, it has blossomed into so much more. Now, Ashley has a unique perspective to share with us because she is part of the HubSpot podcast network. During our conversation, she shares her experience with us, what that opportunity looked like, and how it has supported the growth of her podcast. We also dive into the fears that Ashley faced when stepping out of a full-time career and leaping into the podcasting space. She also shared with us her experience of speaking at podcast movement, how she grew her podcast through guest swapping, and why ultimately she feels most happiest when she is doing live podcasts. I can't wait to share all of this information with you, so let's jump into the conversation. Ashley, welcome to Business Beyond the Mic. It's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Carly. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I love your story and I'm so excited to share it with our listeners. And you just got such an incredible array of things that you have accomplished over your life as such a high achiever. So why don't you take us back and just tell us a bit more about yourself, your brand, your business, and your podcast?
Absolutely. So I am certainly multi-passionate. I am a lawyer, a career advisor, a storyteller, and I have a podcast called No Straight Path where we explore the human stories behind success. So we often see the accolades, we see the job titles associated with someone's LinkedIn profile, all the shiny parts, but we rarely see the real journey behind the accolades in real time, especially from the millennial perspective. And so that's what I love to dig into on my podcast. And it has been such an incredible journey because I am learning from other people and other inspiring humans as I navigate my own journey. And so that's really what the entire brand and business is built around. I've been fortunate to be a part of the HubSpot podcast network, and I've been able to really just learn about how to be a podcaster.
That's amazing. I mean, just to see your story and just what you've accomplished over this last while, going from a career path and traditional career path and then coming into this creator world of podcasting is amazing to see. And I just want to know what inspired you then to launch your podcast?
Absolutely. So we got to take it all the way back. We might need to actually go all the way back to my childhood, which is something I often like to talk about on my podcast. But I was someone who was an overachiever. As you mentioned, someone who has certainly worked really hard and often seen positive results after I put in that work. And so for much of my life, I thought that the path to success was linear. And I thought that if you work hard, you'll see the positive results immediately because that's often what would happen. And I really faced my first big career setback after graduating from law school, and I took the California bar exam and I failed the exam. And that was the first time where I realized, oh, wait, it doesn't always work out according to plan. And I was devastated and shocked, and the journey just felt so lonely. And I thought, one day I'm going to share my story. I don't want other people to feel alone in the way that I did. And even just having conversations with other people who had had similar experiences, that was so comforting and so helpful. And so I thought, okay, one day I'm going to put out a blog post. And I did that, and that resonated with a lot of people. And I realized that there was a gap in the market here. There's something here where we're in these overachieving spaces and people aren't talking about failure. They're not talking about setbacks. They're not talking about the humanity behind the experience. And so I thought, okay, this blog post, there's something to this. I love podcasts. This is 2018. Perhaps maybe one day I'll start a podcast. And so, had that idea, and life happens, became an attorney, practicing a lot of hours. So challenging to start a podcast. But there was a moment where I had a little bit of time. And so I started working on it during the pandemic. That was a time when I felt like people were being more creative. People were starting passion projects. And so that's when I started to work on my podcast. And it was a great place for me to explore something outside of my day job, and something that was helpful for me to kind of work on navigating a challenging time in my life because my mom was sick at the time. And it was something that she really loved and something that I loved, and we loved working. The power of story is just so healing and so beautiful. And unfortunately, she did pass away 2 years after that. And so I thought, okay, what can I do to honor her memory? My mom was a huge storyteller, a huge connector of people. She loved the idea. I'm going to put out the podcast. And so I put the podcast out on February 17th, her birthday, 2022. And it just felt really good to release it. I had no plan. I just wanted to put some stories out there to help people feel less alone. And 3 weeks later, HubSpot, they reached out to me to join their Creator Accelerator program. So it was this amazing, pleasant, serendipitous surprise that I often say is divine, because my mom probably had something to do with that. And I said yes to the opportunity. First, I had to Google Creator and Accelerator and try to understand what I was doing, because it's very different from my legal practice. And I'm so glad that I said yes to this opportunity, because although it started as perhaps a grief project and a passion project, it really helped me live again. It helped me feel truly alive and help give other people hope in the career context, in the journey of life context. And that just felt really amazing.
Oh, that's such a beautiful story. And I mean, the fact that you started out because you wanted to help other people not feel alone in the thing. And the thing is, you never know who you're going to touch. I mean, when I first heard your story, I was listening to the podcast in my ears, rocking my little girl to sleep. And you're telling me, oh, you started it because of your mom and she had passed away. And I'm sitting there in tears, rocking her because my mom passed away almost 4 years ago now too. And she won't be able to see what I'm doing. But like you said, she'd be so proud and excited about, look at what we're all doing in this world. And yeah, so it just totally touched me out of nowhere. And it was just like, wow, this is going to be an amazing conversation with Ashley. And I am just beyond excited to talk to you about it. But yeah, you never know when it's going to hit you, right?
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I'm so sorry about your loss and that you're a part of this club as well. But I'm so
I know.
happy that
We're
we've
not
been able
alone.
to connect. Yes, exactly.
Right.
And be reflections of our mothers and,
Yes.
do work that I know that they're proud of. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, you could have this great, like, passion or like inspiration to do a thing, but we're often faced with like a ton of little fears that creep in. So would you say there's something like an obstacle or a fear that you faced before you committed to launching your podcast?
I would say that the fear did not come up when I launched the podcast, just because it was more so of a passion project, and I really didn't even have the capacity to hold fear in my heart and in my body in that time because of everything that was going on. In addition to just kind of dealing with the grief, I was also planning my wedding. I was also on some huge cases, leading cases. So I just couldn't, there was no thought of fear in that moment, which is an interesting thing. It's kind of like when you're just so overwhelmed, you're just like, I'm just going to do the thing because I need to do the thing. But I will say that the fear did creep in later when I made a big decision to take a sabbatical. And so from my law firm to pursue the podcast. And so that's where I had to make a decision because I was at a place where I was in this HubSpot Creator Accelerator program. There are some requirements. They're pretty demanding. And I had a demanding life already. And so I thought, do I take a chance on myself? This can maybe just stepping away from legal practice to pursue my dreams for a little bit. Perhaps it could pay off, but it's still really scary to be in a position like that. And so that's why it was a sabbatical and I didn't just quit my job because I am a practical dreamer and I am risk averse as a lawyer. But there was definitely fear when it comes to making that big leap.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like a complete pivot or like letting go of something that's been a constant in your life. But the thing is, at least you had like this opportunity waiting for you on the other side with HubSpot. So I think our listeners would be so interested to hear, what was that process like once you said yes to their opportunity that they were offering you?
Absolutely. So it was incredible. It was amazing. It was overwhelming. I think that one thing when you are creating something that is just for your soul and for passion, and it quickly becomes a business, I think there's a lot of challenges that come with that. And it was really nice to be in a supportive environment. I was one of the only creators who didn't have a brand, who didn't have a business, who didn't know what an impression was, who didn't know what the HubSpot CRM platform was. I had never heard of a CRM. So a lot of the language and the objectives and the goals associated with the podcast and growing the podcast from a business perspective was foreign to me. And so it was nice to be in a network where there was a lot of support. So you have a community manager, you have other creators, everybody's so open to helping you. I got to appear on other creators' podcasts and they would share different gems of wisdom. They'll take a meeting with you. We have a group text. We have trainings. They'll do really great webinars. So all of that support, especially when you are a new creator, I think is so wonderful. And there's a lot more of these accelerator creator programs that are popping up, which I think is great. But I think just really trying to grasp the goal of growing a podcast because it's a marketing platform. So they're focusing on the numbers and the downloads and the listeners and the community and trying to make that mental shift of someone who's just thinking, I want to tell inspiring stories. I think that was hard, but also lovely. Like I love learning new things. I love jumping into a new industry and learning something new. It's often what I do as a lawyer. You take on a new case in a completely new industry and you learn everything. You get up to speed on that company and the facts and things of that nature. So I was doing it in a different context and it was a really fun context because creators are so passionate about what they're doing. Podcasters all have a story. And I felt like so seen in so many of the conversations because so many people were like me. We were different, but there are a lot of commonalities.
Yeah, no, totally. Because when you've got that community support, it's not like you're sitting out there wondering, hey, where do I even start? Who do I reach out to for a guest? You're saying they're open to chatting with you or hopping on a call or even featuring you on their podcast or vice versa. And it's just like so much more, it gives you that boost of confidence that you need, that you're not like floundering around out there trying to grab at straws just to get your podcast going or find like a direction for you. Would you say that it's like that community creates other types of benefits for your podcast in the long run? Like how has it been able to help your podcast grow just through community?
Yeah, I mean, definitely 100%. So a lot of podcast growth often happens through guest swaps because what you're doing is you're tapping into another person's audience. I think sometimes people think it's, you need to have this big guest with this big following, and this big brand, but not always the people that like that person may not really listen to podcasts. So you want to have a sticky audience. And so what's interesting is when you are swapping, if you do a guest swap as an example with someone who's like-minded, who might have a similar audience, then that's where you're really going to see a big return on your investment from a growth and marketing perspective, but then also just from a human connection meaning perspective, when you are just connecting with people who are like-minded, who are trying to do the same things that you're doing. And it's really beautiful. So I think that it has been so helpful. And then just from a more personal perspective, going and meeting the different creators, going and speaking at these various events. Last month, I spoke at Podcast Movement, and that was such a wonderful experience. I connected with more creators. We set up more guest swaps, and we just set up a group text too to just help each other through the journey, because a journey can also be lonely sometimes. It gets very interesting how I created a podcast to help people feel less alone, but then simultaneously, I'm on a journey that can feel lonely sometimes. And so having that community and having that support group is invaluable. And I feel very grateful.
Yeah, totally. That's so key that you're saying you could feel so lonely as the creator trying to help others feel less alone. Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And it's just crazy to think like how fast things happen when you actually do meet in person. It's not this like long wait of, oh, I hope they saw my email, or like, when are they going to respond, back and forth. It's like instant, just like that community that forms when you actually meet in person. So that's amazing. The other thing I wanted to ask you is like when you're swapping audiences or like guest swapping, as you mentioned, how do you organize it or like plan it out strategically that what your guest that's coming on is going to bring something that resonates with your audience, even though it is, as you say, like that sticky audience? How do you make sure that it's going to hit home with the listeners that are actually tuning into your show?
Yeah, so I'm pretty intentional with my guest swap. So I don't think you should do a guest swap with everyone. You want to do a guest swap with someone that you really deeply connect with. You might see yourself in their story, see something that you think might resonate with your audience. My thing is inspiration. I want people to listen to my podcast and feel inspired. I want them to feel uplifted about their journey. So if there is something in your story that I know is very inspiring, then I'll likely have you on my podcast. If you're someone that is just pretty business driven, that's lovely. And there's more business focused podcasts where they really want to talk about the numbers. Mine's more of the mindset piece, more of the story piece. And so we talk about that. But what's so wonderful is most people, especially in these spaces, they have an inspiring story. Something drove them to create. There was some pivotal moment in their journey that allowed them to step outside of a traditional path and actually create and share. And so it's been a little bit easier for me because of my perhaps broader approach to just inspiration in general. But I think that understanding what you want to get out of the person for your podcast it's very helpful to have a conversation with them before. So what I often do is I will meet people in person, like we mentioned, but also if someone just connects with me on social media, via email, I always do a screener session just to see if we're aligned and see if it, works out, because I don't want to waste anybody's time. And I want to make sure that I add value to the listeners. And I also want to do the best for the potential guest as well and what they want to get out there. I don't want to make them say it's a part of their story. Perhaps they don't want to be vulnerable, right? Then maybe they shouldn't come on the podcast. So I think that's kind of my process.
That's really good advice, because that kind of gives you that kind of baseline, and you can really sum a person up, like I say, when you're actually in conversation with them and kind of testing the waters, if you were doing that. But yeah, you'll actually, I guess you'll know from your audience too, if it resonates with them from like feedback and things that like downloads that you're getting, or is this hitting home? And I know like a lot of people are focusing on different kind of metrics to see whether a show has been a success, or an interview or a specific episode. So what do you use for a metric to see and gauge kind of Are you in the right direction? Or do you need to have specific ones for HubSpot as a network behind you when you are doing your podcast?
Yeah, so it's more of the latter. So I'm in the emerging creator program. So I started in the accelerator program and then transitioned to the partner program. The accelerator had very high demand when it came to downloads. And so that's pretty challenging. That's where they're giving you capital to kind of help with the marketing. And I saw a lot of growth, but I didn't see the growth that I needed to see to get to the next round. And so I had another opportunity to stay on with HubSpot, which was great. They really believed in my vision and basically for an opportunity for monetization. And so the opportunity to get to monetization is based on downloads. And so that is the metric that I have to use to look at growth. So I look at downloads as the main metric for success from an external perspective. But then from an internal perspective, it's what is my audience saying? What am I learning? Am I growing? Did that feel good? Is this where I want to take the show? Because it can be a distraction sometimes when you're trying to grow from a business perspective from your purpose. So I always just try to go back to my purpose. And my purpose is to help people feel seen and heard and valued and to inspire. And so am I doing that with these episodes?
I love that you have the both of those perspectives, because from the monetization side, it's beneficial for your podcast, but from the internal perspective, as a creator, it's so key to still have ownership of what you're creating and making sure that you are the influence of the direction that you are going in. So yeah, it's great for podcasters to keep that in mind, that even though there is a side where you are focusing on the hard metrics, there's another side that you have to keep in mind, that internal perspective. So that's really great advice. Thanks, Ashley. And I think as we're moving along with this kind of metrics focus, what is next for your podcast? Like, do you have new things that you're planning on the horizon, something that you're looking forward to, or just like new goals that you've set for yourself in this journey?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I think it's going to be a bit of a surprising way to approach things, but I think this is just where I'm at in my life right now. But I feel like in the beginning of the year, or just even when I started the podcast, I was so metrics focused and so downloads focused that it led to burnout and just really not a very healthy mindset with respect to the podcast. And I lost a little bit of joy from it. And then I was able to reset and reframe and build more sustainably. And I've noticed that when I kind of let go of my goals just a little bit, because I'm such an intense overachiever and I hold them very tight, that is actually where the magic happens. That's where the growth happens. So I'm in a space right now where I am going to continue to put out excellent content. I am going to make sure that every episode is great, that every episode is something that resonates with someone. And I hope from my listeners thus far, thankfully, I'm getting a message every week. This helped me do this. Thank you for sharing this. I learned this. That is all I'm going to focus on, is my listeners, my content. As far as the bigger goals that I was thinking about with growing out the newsletter and maybe going to video content, and there's so many things you can do. Everyone's like, oh, you should create a workbook and monetize this. And I try to think about what feels good to me. So when I hear these suggestions, how does that sit? Is there a tension there? Do I want to actually do that? I'm trying to build this brand in alignment with who I am. And that is very hard to do. And so I'm trying to really pay attention to myself. And I think where I'm at right now, even though I'm so grateful for all the suggestions from people, one person's like, you should write a book. Let's figure out how we can get you a book deal. And there's all these things. I'm at a space where I just want to put out great stories and grow as organically as possible. And then I'll think about it maybe in 3 months. Maybe, Carly, I'll email you and tell you, this is what I'm doing now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. In 3 months' time, so much can change. But yeah, but you're right. You can't just be putting out a book and making this like download for people to buy, or a course or things, if it's not what's inspiring you. Because then it's just like you're making more work for yourself. You're copying, pasting what everybody else is out there. Like I heard someone say the other day, oh yeah, there are a lot of books out there. And I'm like, there are a lot of books out there. And if you're not passionate about your book or what you are out there to teach people, why are they going to care about it? Because you're not operating from that space of this is something that I love and I want to give to other people. So yeah, it's good to keep in mind that you're not just doing what other people are suggesting because it's the it thing to do right now, but it has to be something that resonates with you and your brand and you as a creator. So that's such a golden nugget right there.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
And one thing I will add too is you also have to just like recognize who you are in this space. If you are a business person, you can be a business owner and not be a business person, as an example, right? I am one of them. I know how to do all of the things right now because I am doing everything right now. I have most things outsourced, but then when I went on my sabbatical, I've learned every aspect of the business, and that has been invaluable and very helpful, but I don't enjoy it. And so when I talk to creators and the talent and the people who want to inspire people using their personal brand, I think it's so helpful to have a business-oriented, operations-oriented, strategy-oriented person who enjoys that work to join your team. So to go back to your question, I do think one day I will have someone join in that way because I want to preserve the inspiring creator space. So that's something that other people can also think about. Okay, maybe I can operate in this lane, still learn the entire business because you want to know everything, but perhaps you outsource some of these things that maybe aren't really resonating with you and who you are, so you can be the great creator and the great podcaster that you're meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, because you're just doubling down on what you are good at. And I mean, there are other people who are great at the other things, and to fuse them together that's amazing. Like even for me as a business owner, I can do a lot of things, but my time is where it comes to the end of that. So even though I can't find somebody who can do everything that I can do, I can find multiple somebodies who are great at individual things, and together we make an amazing team. And there we go. We're on the road to success. So
yeah,
that's amazing. So, Ashley, we are getting to the amazing part of the fun part of the interview where we're just going to go over these 4 quick fire questions and you just answer what you have. And I just want to pick your brain on these 4 quick things. So, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, question 1, how has the podcast changed the way you do business or life?
It's allowed me to be more passion-oriented.
Oh my gosh, that's a deep one. I wish you go into it. But these are quick fire. Number 2, the top 3 tools that you use as a podcaster.
Definitely We Edit,
Hey.
Megaphone, and Riverside FM.
Number 3, is there a non-negotiable investment from your side as a podcaster that you would never skip out on?
Editing quality is so important.
Perfect. And the last one, this is the fun one. If money and time were not a factor, what would be next for your podcast?
Live shows. Yes. The energy of the crowd all around LA, all around the world, live shows, sharing our stories.
Have you envisioned this before for your podcast? Like kind of seeing yourself out there?
I've done parts of it, and that's where I'm the happiest. Oh yeah. When I do a live podcast, it's so fun. And then you connect with the people in the audience, and then you become friends, and then you come on their podcast. This is an actual example of what recently just happened. And there's just something about being able to invite your friends and family. Like my dad was in the audience, and so he asked a question, and it was so fun.
Oh my gosh. Because I think like a lot of people, when you say live, they immediately like get so shocked and they're like, oh my gosh, but you can't like stop and re-edit or whatever, like that section. It's like, it's live.
Yeah.
So do you face any of those fears like when you're going live, or is it just like such a thrill and you feel right at home?
I think because I'm usually interviewing someone that might be a little nervous, I act calm. And so I kind of have to be calm in that moment so that it's a good interview, and it's worked out well thus far. And yeah, it's just a discussion and a conversation. There just happens to be a live audience.
Oh, no big deal. Oh my gosh. Well, Ashley, you are such an inspiration. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with our listeners today, that a piece of advice that has just been critical on your journey as a podcaster?
Absolutely. So I would say always go back to your why when it comes to podcasting. You put out your podcast for a reason. And so as you are going down this journey, because podcasting is really fun, it's amazing, but it also is challenging to be consistent, to grow. It is not an easy industry at all. And so going back to your why, figuring out your purpose, why am I doing this? During the hard moments, it's going to help you continue down this path.
Wow. Yes. I always harp on consistency. So I'm glad that I'm hearing it from other people as well. This has been so incredible, Ashley. This has been so nice to just share your journey with our listeners. And I'm sure they're going to be just full of information and things that they can take on their own personal journey, apply to their story as a podcaster. So yes, so grateful to have you on and learning more about your business beyond the mic.
Thank you so much, Carly. And just all the listeners, as you know, I use We Edit, and this is not an advertising thing at all. I absolutely love the brand, everything that you guys do. You help me put out these stories. And I'm just so grateful that I got to meet you, Carly, because you've built such an incredible business with great people who have been just so helpful in my podcasting journey. So I want you to know that.
Oh, that's so great to hear. Thanks, Ashley. And that's what I'm saying. If we're not helping podcasters, then I don't know what I'm doing right or wrong, right? Oh, well, everybody, thanks for joining us. You can find all of Ashley's information in the show notes, and we will see you next time.